On January 24th, 1848, gold was discovered by James Marshall at Sutter's Mill near Sacramento, California. He had been building a mill for his employer, John Sutter. Both men hoped to keep the discovery secret, but soon rumors leaked out. President James Polk confirmed the gold strike on December 5th, 1848. The blacksmith dropped his hammer, the carpenter his plane, the farmer his sickle, the baker his loaf, and the tapster his bottle, said Walter Colton. The rush for gold had begun. The gold rush brought a huge migration of Americans and foreigners to the sparsely settled land of California. This migration pushed California into statehood in 1850 and transformed sleepy Yerba Buena into the thriving city of San Francisco. The California gold rush also opened the West for future settlers. The man who triggered this massive migration, John Sutter, was eventually ruined by the gold rush. Sam Brannan, who spread the word of the gold rush, exclaiming, "Gold, gold, gold on the American River," made it rich by selling supplies to the 49ers. Who were these men and women who flocked to the gold fields, and what routes did they take to travel to the gold fields? Yet more important, what was the impact this great migration had on the people that considered California home? In 1848, before the gold rush began, about 14,000 people, not including Indians, lived in California. By the end of 1849, the population nearly reached 100,000 and would top the 250,000 figure by 1852. They came from all parts of the world, French and British fur traders, Peruvians and Chileans from South America, and Chinese from Asia. Most people here speak English, good or bad, but you find at the side of a lean Yankee in tight pants, others recognizable by their clothing or accent. There is a stocky John Bull, a Chinaman, a Hindu, a Russian, and a native California, all trying to converse. Vicente Perez Rosales. Despite the various nationalities, roughly 2/3 of the 49ers were from the United States, and 2/3 of those Americans were from New England. Although people flocked from all over the world to the gold fields, most were usually middle-aged and male. Only 8% of the 49ers were women. According to Margaret Frank, one of the few female 49ers, there are but few women. Among these thousands of men, we have not seen more than 10 or 12.
There are women who were interested in going to California, just like the men did, because they're interested in making money. Most of them, though, didn't do gold mining themselves. They went as single adult women, and they were going to make their money off of gold miners rather than the gold mining.
The 49ers took 3 different routes to the gold fields of California: around the Horn, a shortcut through Panama, and the rough overland trail across the United States. The route around Cape Horn took 9 months and was relatively safe. However, seasickness and boredom was always present. Another problem was the ever-threatening Cape Horn weather. Sudden squalls, gales, hail, sleet, rain, and even snow tossed the clipper ships while passing through. The second route to the gold fields was a shortcut through Panama. It was a quicker route, but more hazardous.
2 sea routes. One left from the eastern seaboard, sailed down to the Isthmus of Panama, and then people would slog across the Isthmus of Panama, and then pick up another ship on the west coast of Central America, and then sail up.
The transportation across the isthmus was both unpredictable and precarious. Argonauts encountered diseases like malaria, faced problems of high-priced guides, and would probably have to wait for a ship to take them from western Panama up to California. The third route to California was by the Overland Trail. This 2,000-mile trip was made by covered wagon. It was a hard 4-month journey with sicknesses like cholera, dysentery, and fever plaguing many gold rushers. They went southwest on the Santa Fe Trail and then across the desert, where they took the old Spanish Trail. But most took the Oregon Trail to one of the California cutoffs. The impact of the gold rush was devastating on California and its people. Several groups, including the Hispanic population, known as Californias, the native Indian tribes, and the foreigners, such as Chinese, were affected by this mass migration. The Californios lost most of their land to migrating squatters. These Americans came and lived on their land and wouldn't leave. The U.S. court system favored the squatters and allowed them to stay on the land formerly owned by the Hispanic people.
A lot of squatters came in and took over lands that the squatters thought were unoccupied, but actually were owned by the Californios. The Californios, because land, precise borders were less important to them, it was very easy for the incoming Yankees to claim that certain lands weren't actually owned, that the Californios claimed they owned.
Even Mariano Guadalupe Hidalgo, a rich landowner, was betrayed. Lawsuits and invasions reduced his estate from 250,000 acres to less than 300. Another group impacted by the 49ers were the foreigners. The most discriminated against were the Chinese. At first, the Chinese were welcome because of their hard work, but the gold rush changed everything. The Chinese were tolerated as long as surface gold was plentiful. But soon surface claims disappeared, and disappointment made the miners look for someone to blame. In 1850, the California State Legislature passed the Foreign Miners License Law. This law required foreigners to pay a tax of $20 per month for a license to mine in the state of California. This was an excessive amount of money at that time, and most were forced to leave. Within a short time, the Frenchman, the Mexican, and the Chileno had been driven out, and the full force of the anti-foreign persecution fell upon the unfortunate Chinese. When the Chinese paid the $20 foreign miners tax, Americans burned their shacks, beat, flogged, and even murdered the Chinese in hopes of scaring them away. However, it was the native California Indians that suffered the most. There were about 150,000 Indians before the gold rush. By 1870, there would be less than 30,000. It was the worst slaughter of Indians in American history. The Indians suffered from white man diseases like fever, smallpox, and other diseases, raising the mortality rate to an extreme high.
An Indian shot an ox belonging to the white people. It was out in the woods, and he shot it, and the Indian tribe ate it. And the word came to the mining town, and they immediately declared war on the tribe.
Many Indians died from white disease, but more were killed on purpose, by random murder, starvation, poisoning, hunting for sport, mass rape, syphilis, and bondage worse than slavery. They killed thousands of Indians. Some men, known as the squaw hunters, killed the Indians on weekends for pleasure. There was no longer room in California for the first Californians.
Of all the comrades I had then, there's none left now but me. And the only thing I'm fitting for is a senator to be. And the people cry as I pass by, there goes a traveling sign. That's old Tom Moore, a bummer sure from the days of 49.
Within a few years, all the surface gold was gone. You couldn't mine with only a shovel or pick anymore. New techniques of mining were used, such as hydraulicking or washing away hillsides with pressurized water to find gold. California mining would be left for big money investors in San Francisco. The California gold rush reached its peak in 1852. 100,000 miners had extracted $81 billion in gold. Yet the impact of the Great Migration in 1849 had a lasting negative effect on the people of California.